Hello, everyone.
Whoa. This is you, not me. Okay.
Okay. All right. Had a computer issue that came up, and so we're using some of the older computers that settings are different. And so, hopefully, with the bad weather and our computer systems, as I broke one machine yesterday, so hopefully the show will be a little bit smoother in the coming days. But tonight, we'll just have to work with what we have. As always, a little house cleaning and housekeeping before we start. Nightbot's out there for our mods, and so the prompts will be in there. And for the rest of the people in chat, just be respectful of each other, and especially mods, and enjoy your time with us tonight, as we'll be speaking about some planning and execution of Kohberger and for his plan of action of whatever his intent and what his plans were for that night. Um, and so, with that being said, we'll get started. As always, we do a brief introduction. This is Mrs. Steve, and I'm Steve. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, 20 years of service. Started off my career working in the jail, went on the road, and then into investigations. During those 20 years, I had all different types of training from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician, which helped my investigative career. After I retired, I found the true crime world, and I decided I wanted to become an ambassador for law enforcement and created this channel, which has opened a lot of doorways, and we are expanding and doing things that we never anticipated. And I'm so thankful that our channel allows us to do that, go out and help these families with cold cases. And I owe it to this community and this channel and my members and viewers and everything. So anyway, as we always start, if you have any information regarding this case of the homicides of Madison, Kaylee, Ethan, or Zana, notify law enforcement, make sure they have that information. They'll be needing all the information they can acquire in the coming days and months from the recent hearing that came out that it's not going to be a speedy trial. And so it's going to be months in the coming days and weeks and probably years. And there's a lot of information that, as I was doing the research for this show and realizing by looking at the probable cause affidavit, how the tip of the iceberg that there's certain hints in that probable cause affidavit from a law enforcement perspective. And we'll be getting into those. Mrs. Steve and I went out and did some testing, and so you don't have to turn that. Is that too loud?
I'm turning it on right this second.
Okay. But anyway, the as we was doing our research and doing our testing, and it was quite remarkable what we found out, because I never realized not only the phone tracking ability of the cell towers, but what was hinted at in the probable cause affidavit from the Wi-Fi connections and what can be done with those. And we're going to be looking at that tonight because I went out and did some testing, and hotspots, absolutely amazing. So anyway, if you have information about him, like I said, there's a tip line, email line, digital media. There's all different types of ways to make sure that that information is gotten to the proper authorities. And if you have information that is benefits or possibly that will bring some type of information for the defensive team, that needs to be brought in also. And for the fact that he is innocent until proven guilty. And if there's information out there that says that he's not the guilty party, then we need the guilty party in jail. But some of the information from the affidavit we have covered prior to, and I went in and picked a couple of 3 slides. Not going to spend a lot of time on them, but they went out and, of course, got the cell site location information so that they would be able to track the phone that Kohberger has, and to check, see if he'd been doing stalking and conducting surveillance. for his plans. As we saw prior to him coming and moving to Idaho, and as he was finishing up his courses in Pennsylvania, that survey that he conducted asking about certain behavioral patterns and feelings of other criminals, which was extremely interesting. And then he moves to another state across the country and commits a quadruple homicide. And we have to look at what was the reasoning and the manners and what type of steps he took for those plannings. And so through the tracking of his devices, and we don't know how many devices he has. He could have had multiple phones, or he could have had multiple devices within the vehicle that may have pinged not only on the cell towers, but also now that we know law enforcement looked at the router for 1122 King Road, that is important. And so what other areas that he may have been pinging on? But there was at least 12 occasions prior to November the 13th, 2022, and that he had went to that into that area. And I have been looking at it, and it says prior to November the 13th. So this means that at least this is the 13th trip or visit that he took to that location. Now, is he some type of individual that this was something that was part of his plan? That is, just total speculation on it. But I did find it odd when I was reading the affidavit, and I said, well, 12 prior, this is his 13th trip, and we're looking at November the 13th. Was there something specific about his planning that, some people love the number 13. I have a sister. That's her favorite number. Now, is this something that he's fixated on? Because if certain individuals and certain psychopaths, and they have certain fantasies, and they do not think in the same manner that we do, their associations and their fantasies are built totally on what is self-gratifying to them.
Wrong one.
Molly, nah, thank you. Appreciate your support. And so when you're looking at what drives these individuals and whatever part of their fantasy, and how, they're narcissistic, and there's nothing, they're the smartest, brightest, and they can plan anything out perfectly. And I'm sure that if he is the guilty party, and I believe that when he acted, and that he believed that he did have a perfect plan. And during those prior 13 visits, we know that he acted on this 13th visit, at least the 13th visit, because, of course, we have the quadruple homicide. But how many other times that right now we don't know that after he first crossed paths with whichever one he was started targeting initially, and then may have moved on to additional targets. But whenever he made that first contact, how many times during those 12 priors that he was thinking about that this would be the night? It would have, of course, not, was it the first time he went over to the residence and he had already made contact with them at some other location? And so now he comes to 1122 King Road. Was it, which one was he planning on that this would be the day? What was his trigger point? And had he made some dry runs, whereas he went over and everything was just not right to fit what he had planned? Were there more people there than that night? And when you look at the vehicles that were outside, and what would have driven him that said, okay, I'm going to leave my house. When I leave my house, I turn my phone off. And I believe he had probably more than one occasion had turned his phone off prior to coming to that location. And law enforcement, that's part of the reason they say at least 12, because they may have noticed other times when his phone was off, and they have no idea of tracking. There's no digital, there's no camera, and they don't know where he was at. But it is very significant that they do say at least 12. So we look at the timelines of that night and what was going on in parallel timelines. And I did one for the victims, of course, Madison, Kaylee, Ethan, and Zana, and then Kohberger. And seeing, it's an odd time that you leave your house at 2:42 in the morning. What was his normal sleep patterns? And law enforcement will be able to look at his usage of either searches on his devices, look at his phone data, and they will be able to tell what his activity times are. And is this a normal time for this individual of Kohberger to be up and moving about and doing searches or whatever he does at night? I know we have some neighbors that said that he did keep odd hours. So this could have been something that was quite common for him. Or it was part of his plan. Had he done certain researches that told him that this is the best time of night, that individuals will be in REM sleep patterns and deep sleep and gives you the best advantage? Or was it due that this night and that time frame was from his previous surveillance or being in the area and noting in the habits and their sleep patterns of a house that he was going into, that he knew that at this time generally they were asleep? And of course, you look at the timelines from 1:30 for Madison and Kaylee being at the club, at the grub truck at 1:40, getting home at 1:56, and then Ethan and Zana getting there just a few minutes prior, around 1:45, and then Zana having the DoorDash delivery at 4, which is may or may have not have thrown a monkey wrench into his plan, but he still followed through with it for whatever reason. And we know Zana on TikTok at 4:12, and then the discovery at 9 when they contacted 911 the following day right at noon. But it is extremely odd for any individual to get up and leave on whatever type and whatever his plan of action, his mission was of that night. And within 5 minutes of him leaving his residence, he turns his phone off. And like I said, law enforcement will look at that and analyze it. The behavioral analysis unit, they're going to look at and figure out exactly what was going on in other areas. And then we see that at 3:39 from some of the camera footage, vehicle is seen, and then it's seen leaving at 4:20. And then the phone, he turns it off at 2:47. He turns it back on at 4:48. And so we have, you got this 2-hour plus period. What was he doing prior to arriving from 2:47 to 3:39 when the vehicle was seen? And as a lot of criminals will do, that they go to a certain staging area as they don't want to be seen. I'm not saying that this is what he did, but I have seen it, and I have arrested criminals that they do not leave their residence dressed in the same clothing that they will commit the crime in, for the fact that they're fearful that doing so, that a neighbor may see them regardless of day or time that they're leaving the residence, that they could be spotted, and they don't want a lookout to come out and be aired through the news or on a scanner saying, look for so-and-so wearing certain clothing, such as the one witness that saw him said that he was wearing all black when she saw him outside her door when he was leaving Ethan's and Zana's bedroom area, and he walked right past her. Was he wearing all black when he left his residence? From my interactions and knowing how criminals behave, I would think that was highly unlikely. It's possible, but just my opinion, I think highly unlikely. I think between 2:47 and his arrival at 3:39, I think part of his plan was to change into whatever type of clothing. But then after the homicides are committed, and he's leaving, and at 4:20 when the vehicle was seen, and 28 minutes later, the phone comes back on. And then soon after that, 42 minutes later, he arrives back at his residence. And then whatever he does at his residence, he returns back into the area of King Road between 9:12 and 9:21 from his device tracking. And so when we look at this specific time frame of when his vehicle was seen in the area and when it's seen leaving, what I did was I looked up, and in the probable cause affidavit, they tell you that when his phone comes back on line around 4:20 a.m., it's near US 95 and near Blaine. And so I looked up the distance from Blaine to 1122 King Road. It's a 19-minute ride, just 8.8 miles just south of Moscow. And then when you deduct that it's a 19-minute ride, but there's 28 minutes that from the time that his vehicle is seen, there's a 9 minutes of missing time there. And I know it doesn't sound like that big of a time, but it still is significant for the fact that he has 9+ minutes of free time of what could he be doing. Is he changing clothing? Is he destroying evidence? Is he throwing it away? Is he hiding it? What was happening during those minutes? And why did he choose to go in that direction? And what was his part of his plan of doing so? Because it's all, this wasn't by chance that those 12 previous times he was there, and law enforcement will look at his historical data and they will build on it and seeing where he normally, and on the 12 times he was there, they would look at the historical data and also see where else he went during those trips and what type of scouting activities he may have been doing during those crimes. And, it's absolutely fascinating how law enforcement can approach these areas and look at these things, regardless of how the criminal plans it, that they think they're doing all this great planning and have a strategy of how the crime would go during their plan of action. And it rarely works out. We have at least 2 individuals that were at the residence that weren't known to. Sweet City, $5. I wonder if he went to the forest to attempt to get away or just himself changed his mind. Reminds me of Landry. Absolutely, that is a possibility of something that may have been in his mindset, not only that night, but in the following hours, because there was a long trip the following day. So that is a possibility. Good point. But during these 10 minutes of missing minutes, there's a lot of things that can go on because the actual homicides took only minutes also. From when he first gets in the area, and when we know that the DoorDash delivery is made, and we know from the surviving witness of when noises were heard upstairs and when noises were heard in Ethan's and Xana's room, and then the confrontation. So we have a very tight period of time that all these crimes or the homicides occurred. And then we have a great timeline of when he exited the area and seen driving and moving through the communities. And so we have this from the cellular devices. But we also have something that I didn't realize until I read the probable cause affidavit, and I saw mention of, and then we have a news release by the father, and he speaks about that they're close enough to be touching their Wi-Fi. So that means the investigators, and there's some great minds out there and technology is so far ahead, and where we're heading, and what will happen as investigators go in, and we have these specialists that can go in here and look at this new technologies. I know it's been around for a long time, but it's still advancing. And if you're going to commit a crime and you don't anticipate, and he's in a field that he's supposed to know about data collection, and you don't anticipate that you're in a college town and how many Wi-Fi networks are out there and open. And because I live in a rural area, as you'll see here in a minute, and because if it touched their Wi-Fi, how many other Wi-Fis did Kohberger's phone devices contact and touched? Because all of them now, there is a digital trail and data that you can absolutely map out. And I'm sure law enforcement would have drove that same route. And as they drove those routes, they would have, and this is my device that I turned on and drove around and did some screenshots of. I did one setting in my living room, which of course just has this one. And then immediately when I walk out and turn on the vehicle, pops up a hotspot. And so now we have these hotspots. And something to be said about hotspots is that they're, a lot of cars, they have it, this hands-free stuff, and the hotspots automatically come on. And as we were doing some testing recently on the roads, we found it quite amusing as we drove around and we hit other people's hotspots that was in their vehicles that were traveling with us. And we were able to differentiate certain vehicles from that when they came in, as Mrs. Steve raced up upon them and got close, that we would hit certain other vehicles' hotspots.
He thinks I drive too fast.
And as other vehicles caught up with us and came alongside, we would see those hotspots come into the device. And so I found that quite interesting. And I thought law enforcement, now that we have this dog lover, BK used the food delivery at the front as a distraction and entered the property at the back, then timings can be a coincidence. Could be, absolutely. We don't
can't be.
Can't be a coincidence. Can or can't. I mean, I understand, and it is a good point, but it may have just been something that he wasn't anticipating, unless Zana has a routine of eating at 4:00 in the morning, and she may have. I don't know. I don't know what the history. Law enforcement knows what that history is, and that may be part of what they normally did. That when they came home, that was part of her normal activities.
Explain how he got in there, though.
Well, no, I mean, sliding glass door. Yeah, it would. Yeah, I mean, there could be a distraction, and it could be that he was counting on that. So, in his prior surveillance, if he had noted that and knew that that was something that they normally did, yeah, absolutely, it could. It wouldn't have to be a coincidence. It could or could not be. But then, after we did the hot spots and played with the traffic and drove around and looked at all those, I went up into, and I live in a very rural part of Georgia, outside metro areas. And so as I was going up and driving down and I just went to a couple intersections just within 100 yards of each other. And at one intersection, as you can see on the 351 on the left-hand side, just setting at one stop sign, I had 7 that popped in that was there. 6, because you count no, I didn't. I was in a different vehicle. It didn't have a hot spot. So there was 7 on this one. And then I went to another stop sign 100 yards away. And on that one, I hit 8 different networks. And some of them, as you can see, are locked. And you can see that there's some that's unlocked. And so there could be some more, like I said, we was looking at the tip of the iceberg that when the father spoke about that Kohberger had touched that Wi-Fi, in a college town and in the communities and even in the rural parts of Idaho as he traveled along, whereas the pings of the cellular devices can be off generally, and we don't know how much of the GPS tracking or how close the tracking could be or is. We do know that if anyone out there along those routes and law enforcement will drive them, they'll identify those the routers that are accessible in the area. And I think that in this case, we're going to see a landslide of digital evidence that's never been seen in the courts before. I absolutely believe that's going to be the case, that we're going to see thousands and thousands of pages of data points of pointing to Kohberger. I was worried due to some of the other investigations that as you go along and you look at of how much digital evidence is out there from the cell tower. But then when the information came out about the router and touching the Wi-Fi, and I thought about that, and I said, okay, we're about to see something that we've never seen before, and which gives me greater confidence in what law enforcement has done and what they will be doing. But, you know, there's larger colleges out there than the University of Idaho, but still they have 12,000 students. And so whatever type of surveillance or stalking that Kohberger is going to be involved in, he's going to leave a path that is easily traceable and trackable. And so they're going to be able to look at that and be able to tell exactly what his interactions were and his travels were. But anyway, now we'll get into any questions if there are any.
You got a few.
And as always, if you have any information, like I said, that is even on this, you know, if you're out there and you're seeing this or you have family members there that they may not, but they can go in. I mean, you know, there's just go online and you can Google up how you can look at devices that have been in your area. You know what the timeline is and time frame of him being out and his movements during certain periods. And, you know, if you see anything on your router during those periods that's suspicious, notify law enforcement. It will be a help.
Okay.
If you're in Idaho, if you're on those routes, don't call them from Georgia. But
yeah. All right, let's see here. And Molly, she wants to know, was Mr. Steve throwing fake blood or luminol on your Google machine and broke it?
It was my Google machine, but no.
Y'all listen.
Yeah.
Say that again.
It was my Google machine. And it just, you talk, and I was creating not only this presentation, but I was working on a couple, 3 other presentations, and it just went, and I thought, uh-oh, this isn't good.
So tell everybody whose Google machine you're working from today.
Oh, I'm working from Mrs. Steve's Google machine right now. And she's working from my,
just making sure you got that.
And she's working from one of my previous Google machines. So.
All right. And Kirk Mitchell, Steve, please explain preliminary hearing.
In the court processes, they have all different types of court discussions, and the preliminary hearings can cover a lot of topics. And whereas he went in today and he took the course that he did not wish to proceed with a speedy trial, and so now it gives a timeline and a lot of discussions, and they can, you know, during these early hearings, they can discuss all manners of things of how the courts will proceed, what type of evidence, experts, monies that's going to be needed to make sure that a fair trial can be held, and make sure that the defense will have the funding that will guarantee that Kohberger does have a fair trial, because the state and a lot of, you know, has unlimited funding and taxes and people that will go in there and assist. They have the backing of the federal government, FBI, law enforcement agencies that can all step forward. My for the Google machine still waiting. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, he's his phone aggravates him. We're gonna work on that phone. Poor phone.
We are going to work on that phone. All right, let's see here. That's a good one.
I enjoy working with Chris. He is absolutely brilliant, works hard, and we have some things that we're going to be working on when the weather breaks as we move forward. And of course, if anyone out there is watching this show by chance that's never heard of the Mob Crew, the Monsters Under Our Bed, go check him out. Absolutely unbelievable. And I look forward to working for him in the coming year with him and in our collaboration.
All right. So, and I'm sharing this because Jackie had the same thought that I did. Wonder if he was psyching himself up to do it in that little time difference thing.
And there may be, like I said, we don't know how many times he left his house and turned off and he was prepped and arrived there. And for some reasons, there was something that wasn't right. And he didn't feel right about it. Wouldn't be uncommon. And so we just don't know that. But we do know that he had at least 12 previous things. And then on the 13th, which could just be a coincidence, that's November the 13th and is at least his 13th trip. I just found that interesting. And I'm a numbers guy.
Okay. And okay, 8:31, 2, 4. Okay, and Kimmy, so he didn't see Xana and Ethan returning home. That's not, is that her name?
I don't think if we look, yeah,
Okay.
well, it's spelled with an X, and,
Oh, okay.
but I think that's how it's
okay. I got you.
Pronounced.
It threw me.
Yes. You know, this is the timeline that they give us, and they said, you know, it's 2:42, and that's what we were, you know, when you look at that, and that's how come I wanted these times up here, so that you could see both timelines independently of each other. And it says that he did leave at 2:42, and that was a strange time that is totally unrelated, because you would think that he had them under constant surveillance that whole night. That's not the case if you go by what they tell us here. Now, was his phone off prior to this? And we just don't know about it, and they didn't include it in the probable cause affidavit. But if you go just by what's in the probable cause affidavit, this is the timelines that we know of. And they are extremely interesting that he left at 2:42 and everyone else had been in bed or within the residence for over an hour prior to him leaving his residence.
All right, and Jackie. Okay, so the Rockaways. Why did it take him 1 hour to make the 12-minute drive from Pullman to Moscow?
And that's what I was talking about, that sometimes certain things happen. You may go and you may stage that when you leave the crime scene, that you're prepping an area that when you return to it, that you can get in that area and everything happens quickly. I've seen bank robbers do it. I've seen people committing burglaries that they'll go and they'll leave their residence, meet up with someone. Although in this case, we only have, as far as we know, this one individual that was seen by the witness. But they'll go and prep an area that when they leave the crime scene, they can go back there and get cleaned up, change clothes, take care of whatever has to be taken care of, and then go back home. And it's just part of their plan of action, their mission for that night. And is that the case? But I do believe that prior to him, during that, from 2:47.
Why didn't it come up? Oh, there we go.
Missed all of 79. Richard Allen has court Friday the 13th. That's fascinating.
And that's fitting.
Yes. Yes, that's like I said. But it is absolutely that he's off the radar for that hour and almost an hour that he's off the radar. And what does that mean? And but I do believe that he was going somewhere, was prepping so that after the crime, he could get back to that location. And we know that when he left from what the affidavit says, that he was south of, in the opposite direction of what he normally, and so he's south of there for some reason.
Okay. And support with Steffa. Do you do these type of murderers, killers? I'm not supposed to say that, am
They don't
I?
know.
Ever sit down with detectives, profilers, and just tell the entire story?
Yeah, anyone that commits homicide, they can, BTK had to go out in open court. And now, if Brian Kohberger decides that he's going to do a plea, that's going to be part of it. He'll have to go and stand in front of the court and explain everything, just like BTK, and work with law enforcement. That's part of the plea deals. But that takes also the family involvement and agreeing to a lot of pleas and things in the state and the defense, and that's a long way off. But yes, there are certain times that some type of these individuals that they will to not face the extreme sentence, that they will talk and explain what's going on and what drove them to that fantasy.
Okay.
And some of these people, they may spend years in prison prior to speaking, but eventually they do, because they're sitting there. And there's been other noted people that were serial offenders that did speak up, and because they want that attention. And there's only one way to get that attention, and that's to tell their story. Not always true, but they tell that story.
All right. And this is from Ann. I think one piece of info Ellie didn't give us is if they ever caught license plates and all the camera video with the white sedan. And if so, those were his legit plates or bogus substitutes. Was there any mention of that?
No, they never gave it out, but I think there had to be something that, they asked other agencies prior to letting law enforcement know what they were looking for. They knew a vehicle. And when they were asking the other agencies if they had registered vehicles, did they have a partial plate at that time? Possible. But they didn't have the whole plate, or they wouldn't ask the other agencies to look through their records and see who was registered in their areas.
Okay. And Chris at the mob crew, sounds like BK was or suffering from insomnia according to his neighbors.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that's night owls. I'm one of them. I stay up, I'll drink coffee late into the night, and I'm just one of those, I worked most of my career in the dark. I enjoy the night. And is he of that type? Possible.
And Perry, UK True Crime, do you think it's possible Ellie retrieved items Brian Kohberger had used to clean his vehicle and then discarded, such as wipes and tissues, etc.?
If they saw him dumping what they saw him when he was in Pennsylvania, we know that they watched him. And law enforcement, if they watch you clean a vehicle and detail a vehicle, and then they see you go to a trash can, they're going to acquire it. Even if, and do they bring in a specialized trash truck, or do they just take one and make sure it's clean and so that as they collect it from the street side, or do they go in there and in some other type of manner and obtain that trash? There's a lot of different ways they could do it, but they're going to do their job, and they're going to recover that trash. And I believe that was the case.
Let's see here. Okay, and Dave, I wonder if they dusted any of the windows for ear impressions.
Well,
and then hold on to that one. Because then I got this one. Ears are unique like fingerprints, and that's from Steffa. So talk about some ears for me.
I mean, I guess he may have been,
Listening.
do they have, and was he listening? I have no idea. But, would they checked it for fingerprints and all that? And of course, if you see a face impression or a ear impression, then of course, and we have to look at, and that's a good point, that when you look at it from the stalking aspects of it, that we have a lot of things, and that might be one of the things that triggered him on the 13th, that we have to act relatively quick, for the fact that we have some indicators that says the family or the people at that residence were doing things in those final weeks and days. One of the father came over and changed the lock on the door. And then were at the grub truck, you had the individual that says that, well, he was walking with them just to make sure that they were okay, that they had asked for his being with them. And then you have that when they arrived home, they make those that massive cluster of phone calls to a boyfriend, former boyfriend. And so you had some things that says that, well, maybe they were on edge. And then you had Ethan that was staying the night that was not anticipated. And was that something that they were on edge about? And so that they may have noticed or intuition that there was something wrong. And so there are some indicators out there that some of them and had even mentioned that one of them feared that they were being stalked. And so there was some issues and things that you have to look at that may be that he thought had been discovered, and this was his time to act.
Okay. All right. That was Stefan. All right. And this question is from Lisa. Did you notice he cut his eyebrows before court? Bet he keeps them short from now on. He doesn't want those bushy eyebrows anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples throughout court history of people changing their appearance, that they're unrecognizable by the time that they get to sitting in front of a jury. And would that be the case here? Very possible. But there's enough data out there that, and his driver's license and law enforcement's made it that they have video and driver's license images, and you can easily see what his appearance is.
And this is priceless. Mindy, your Google machine is her Google machine, and her Google machine is her Google machine. Everybody knows that, Beauty.
Absolutely. I don't even argue that point.
All right. This is from Kimberly. I'm sure everyone saw the hearing today, noticed scratches in Brian's face. You think he was in a jail altercation?
No. I think he's not used to using some of the finer shaving instruments that you're given. And I don't know. I mean, he may have been into some type of, it's just speculation of what caused that either right now. Now, there may be reports, and that may be something that the court will clarify of, and I've seen it, whereas they'll ask someone, where did those injuries come from? And to try to determine, are they self injuries, or was there some type of issue about the individual's safety, or is it just some type of personal hygiene, and you're not getting the finest triple edge razor? You're getting this cheap that they buy by the thousands razors, and they're single blades, and they don't perform real well. I don't know what caused it. Josh the Posh 63, $5. Thank you for all you do, Mr. and Mrs. Steve. Do you share your slides? And did you ask Mrs. Steve about Cyclops, Texas in Zone 8? She was looking up at Cyclops, today. And, but no, I have not asked her about Zone 8. I've got to get back with her.
Texas is available if you're interested.
It is there now?
No, it is not there.
Oh, okay.
And we haven't started Texas because it's so large, and it's going to take probably, it'll either take me a month to do. I mean, you got 300 and something missing kids, and that's not even the unsolved murder. So it's going to take a minute, but it will be there at some point.
And send me an email. Let me know what you about. Do you share your slides, what you want, and anything? Be glad to help you any way I can.
All right, and let's see here. We'll leave it at that. All right, and this here is from Tammy. Do you think if Kaylee was his obsession, her plans to leave the state could have been why he did this, if he knew?
Yes, we don't know what the triggers and were for this situation, and it could have been something that he may have realized, in that the window of opportunity to commit what he had been planning on those 12 previous being in the areas that his opportunity was winding down, or window of opportunity.
And this is from Kat. How many times did he shut his phone off prior to the 13th?
Absolutely, and they will have a history of that. It may have just been the luck of the draw that on previous occasions certain things had happened, people weren't there, or there were more people there than, because it's high risk. I mean, you can look and, you know, you have multiple vehicles in a residence that is absolutely surrounded by hundreds of people. And it can rapidly go downhill for an offender that is caught red-handed. And it was a high-risk crime, regardless of time. And so, yes, it absolutely is unbelievable that he followed through, even on the night that the crimes were committed. But how many other times did he go and lose, or was decided not to? We just don't know yet.
And Single Mama 4, and thank you for you being a member 3 months. So we appreciate that. It means a lot. And she would like for you to explain co-defendant.
Well, when I talked about, you know, when they first came out, they thought that the occupant, they said occupant or occupants of that vehicle. And so they left it open for that. And so there's some theories out there that there may be others involved due to that one statement. But from the witness in the house that night, is it possible there could have been someone out in the vehicle? We just don't know. But from the witness and that was standing there and saw him walk across the room, she identified a single offender individual. Now, law enforcement may have other information that we're not aware of, but we know that they arrested a single individual matching the description, and they have not mentioned anyone else since that time. So I'm going with single offender, no co-defendants, but there always will be people that think there are more than one. In any case, and
all right, and let's see here. And Dave, I would still like to know if the DoorDash driver had a dash cam. Any mention of that?
You know, I don't know, but that is a great question. And if they do, they will be looking at that, and they already have. Law enforcement, like I said, I think that we're going to see in this case something that we've never seen before, and we're already, you know, getting the tip of the iceberg that that's the way it's heading.
And Perry, UK True Crime question: do you think the perp waited for several minutes between attacks on roommates in different rooms?
No, I think that whatever his actions were very deliberate and swift, and he moved, because we are, you know, even from that 4 o'clock to the 4:20, I mean, you're only talking about, from what the surviving witness said, you're looking at a 20-minute window. And knife injuries, that when they occur, and sometimes death, it's not instantaneous. It sometimes takes several minutes. And so his hands were full for this full, whatever time period it took from one assault to the next assault. He was extremely active, and that may be one of the reasons that he was just exhausted, or someone had created such a ruckus and he was fearful he'd been discovered. And he may even seen the other witness and thought that she had already called 911. And time is not your friend when law enforcement's on your way. You can't just lay around and wait for them to come. You can, but you're not going to be happy when we get there. And because we'll do our job.
Okay. And Kat, those 12 other times, how many times did he consider doing it, but it wasn't right in his mind?
That's exactly, yeah. And hopefully he'll explain that to us and tell us that. Absolutely. Hopefully he will.
And Lisa, don't you think she inadvertently identified his hair color being dark because she couldn't have seen light eyebrows in the dark?
It's possible. I mean, law enforcement, they stuck with, her description, and the probable cause, and they went by it and they said it was helpful. So we'll take it at what they said.
All right. And Steffa, witnesses have to testify during a preliminary, correct?
The definition of witnesses could be witnesses of the state, but no, you won't have until that jury's impaneled and they have a witness list and depositions. And I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that will be brought in. Who would be the experts and whatever the discovery will, but they could and can have witnesses to establish the necessary evidence to proceed with the charges and proceed into the court. So yes, we're going to see some witnesses, but which ones and to what extent, I don't know.
And Kirk, Steve, how long trial begins after prelim? Another 6 months?
It's already, and once again, you have to, what's the definition of a trial? It's already started. The court processes and everything that's done has to be done in a certain order, certain steps, and to make sure that his rights are protected and he has a fair trial before that jury. Now, how long it takes to get to that jury pool, and I have no idea, because we don't know. Are they going to have a change of venue? And where would it be? I mean, there's a lot of court discussions that are going to be coming up in the next few months, even prior to the attorneys still may make special requests, and the court may make special orders and of the court. So there's a lot of things that can go on.
And yes, Fuza says, Puppy has a time limit on patience. You're absolutely right. She can only go for so long with the door shut. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. Let's see.
Poor old puppy.
I know it. Bless her heart. It's been a rough day with the storms too. So she has not had a good one. This will do nicely. Do you think he drove so far just to make L.E. think he had hidden the knife but kept it closer as a trophy?
Yeah, they're going. I think that he drove that far so that he could get out of his orbit of his normal activities and get into a strange community where he could do something such as work on the vehicle, cleaning it up for that initial cleanup. That's just my theory and my speculation of why he traveled so far that first day after he left the King Road area. And and it also has the side element of that law enforcement will look at it and think possibly that's where certain evidence is. And I believe there is evidence there. It may not be that it's the weapon, but I believe there's evidence of his cleaning. And if they can locate that and get that close generation of and first generation of cleaning the car after the crime, that would be huge.
Okay, and Molly, at True Crime Web, Buzzo made a good point that ears grow over a lifetime. Do fingerprints naturally change as we age?
They stay the same other than scar tissues, and some people due to whatever type of jobs they have, like brick masons. They have the same fingerprints the whole time, but you can't hardly read them due to that as they work with bricks and everything. It just constantly keeps the ridges, fingerprint ridges wore down, which is what identifies that individual print, is those friction ridges. And then you have people that type all the time, that their fingerprints are extremely hard to get. They're real fine. And some people are extremely difficult to fingerprint, and some people leave very few fingerprints. And some people, like myself, everything I've ever touched and I've processed, I couldn't get away with anything. I leave fingerprints everywhere.
Go figure. Right. And Olivia at Steve, do you think one of the people was targeted?
Yes. One is the initial target. Absolutely. All of them became targets. Some of them became targets, may only have been the night of, the ones that especially that were not anticipated to be there. He may have not known they were there at the time, but at least one or two of them would have been targeted for a certain amount of time. And then the others could have been collateral, and he had to focus on them and become targets of his rage and face the consequences of him.
And Ann, Mr. Steve, what do you think if he just says, yeah, I stalked them all semester. I'm a creep, but I never went in the house, and was just coincidental I was stalking around them that night too?
Well, and he can say that all he wants, but he has to explain that knife sheath. And I believe there's going to be more DNA in the residence, especially if any of the victims have defensive wounds or injuries. And knowing that during those struggles for survival, a lot of things can happen. The offender can cut himself, or one of the victims can injure him or pull his hair. And but I do believe they're going to find his DNA in the residence, and I believe that they'll find the victim's DNA in his vehicle. I'm speculating, but I hope that's the case.
All right. And Liza Rowe, we do know which door lock was changed, or do we?
I can't remember which one of the fathers was, but he was in a video, and I think it was on the second level. I think it was I'm thinking. I'm not positive on that. Someone in chat probably knows, but I know that at least one of the fathers says that he was there just prior, within days, and had changed a lot.
And Bossy, do you think he had an accomplice?
No, I really don't. Some individual is such high risk. Although that was a question that he put into his questionnaire that he completed. And but I think that he was a solo.
And full of nonsense. I love that name. Would DM smell blood when BK walked past her upon his exit from the house?
I don't know, and I don't even know if she would have recognized it for what it is. I really don't know.
And Miss, what about the idea he walked in and dropped a backpack or something that had items so he could leave undetected, like shoe coverings or hand wipes, cleanup kit?
And is that what he did during that first? Went to an area and pre-staged and had those things somewhere else? the witness that saw him said that he left and walked in a certain direction. We don't know that during that limited few seconds that she saw him and whatever occurred, they, we don't know if she watched him totally out of the house or just glimpsed him as he went through by a narrow opening that she could see him. We really don't know how good of or how long that encounter was. And so, yeah, there could have been a lot of things that he could have had, other items that he picked up as he went out. Anything, yeah, absolutely possible.
Mm-hmm. And missed. Also wonder if the knife in sheath was a backup, so had blood on release.
Anything, yeah. I mean, I feel confident that the K-bar knife sheath is absolutely consistent with the injuries on the victims, because they included it, and they whatever type of knife that would fit in that sheath is the type of knife that could have inflicted those type of injuries. So I know that at least that knife is more than likely involved.
And Vicki Ann, how could they not have screamed? Their roommate would have heard this.
Yes, you never know how people react, and we don't know how his violent, actions were, and how swift, and what injuries did, and how he came, went in, and what was the first injury he inflicted on each of them. We just don't know. And, our one witness and the neighbors and the camera, they make mention of the camera that there was certain noises that could be heard. We don't have those recordings that I know of. There's been some theories out there, is certain recordings correct or not? And I know there's been debunked and all this other stuff. So it is odd that there's not any type of noises that's reported by that one witness. But, we don't know what condition. I don't know how good her hearing was. We don't know if the dog was barking. We don't know anything about how well insulated those walls are. And so, we'll find all that information out at some point, but we just don't know it now.
In SB 74 at True Crime Web, I'm struck by BK going only to Maddie and Xana's room. They would normally be alone. Were they the targets?
Well, if we go by what the surviving witness says, that she heard the noises upstairs first, and that she believes that he left after he left Xana's room, then we have to, I always thought that the second level, that regardless of who was target, I've always thought that occupants of the third level were also targeted, because he didn't, like the father said, he didn't have to go up there. And the only reason he went up there is because there was someone up there he was targeting. But I had first thought that maybe victims on the second floor were first. But after listening to the witness, that changed my mind. So third level was first. And was he also targeting this Xana, and was surprised by Ethan's presence, and that interrupted? And was there going to be other individuals? Was the DM, was she going to be the other victim? And Ethan stopped that. We just don't know.
All right, you got to get off or anything?
No.
Okay, perfect. All right, and PK, should these cases be tried separately?
No, I don't believe so. No, I think they're so interlinked, and they're such a. Now that's just me. Now if you had different defendants, they might argue that, but I don't see that ever happening in this.
And Mr. Steve, were you a little surprised at how much BK's appointed lawyer for his extradition hearing ran his mouth? something Eaton it was.
I hadn't seen that interview. I didn't. I haven't seen that interview.
All right, so that gives you something to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, and Molly at True Crime Web. Basically, the prelim hearing is a mini trial, right? And the defense can present witnesses also, unlike a grand jury.
They can bring all types. Like I said, we're going to have the state has to make the case that yes, we have to continue with the trial, and so it can get extremely in depth, or it can be, it depends on what the prosecution and what the defense wants to do. But there's going to be great information released, and the public will be made aware of through these steps of the court.
And Josh the Posh at True Crime Web. Steve, given what you currently know about the accused, you wouldn't think that he would work very well with an accomplice or accomplices as a team if he is guilty of the crime, right?
Yeah, there's nothing in his that we know of in his history says that he plays well with others.
Nope. All right. And Jocelyn at True Crime Web, do you think they did a lineup for DM to help identify BK?
I don't believe they would. I think, she says that he was wearing a mask and all we have is heavy eyebrows. They could have, but I think, I wouldn't have, but that doesn't mean they didn't. It's possible. But I think that if they had and she had picked him out, it would have been in the probable cause affidavit.
And Molly at True Crime Web, is the gag order still in effect at this point? Last I saw was before the PCA release.
I don't know. I hadn't heard, and I know that from the prosecution's attorney, he made it clear that regardless, there are only allowed to release certain information, and that if you want any information, you're going to have to get it during the whatever is said in court. And until we see one of them standing outside on the steps talking, then the gag order is in effect.
And Kirk, Steve, do you think law enforcement already knows who is targeted?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay, that was short. All right. And Anna, when the witness saw him leave, did he close the door behind him? We never heard one way or another. He must have closed the door or we'd have heard about it.
That is interesting, and I would tend to agree with you. And would that be a source of DNA that will come out later? I'm hoping so. But that is something that we wouldn't know if he went out the back door. But it hasn't been mentioned. You're correct.
Kia Johnson, question. Would his previous cell phone have useful information to the case, and would it be information LE would be able to access?
His previous phone would be from Pennsylvania, from what we know of limited information right now, or it may be another current phone. He, like I said, I carry 3 phones all the time. And so, he may have 2 phones, or he may only have a single phone.
Oh.
But I guarantee you that Pennsylvania is looking at, from the time that he's ever owned a phone and whatever digital information and cellular information they can obtain, they will get. And they'll also look at his financials. Everything about this man's life is going to be under a microscope. And that's what it takes to make sure that individuals that are of this type and caliber of person is able to be controlled and, jailed and convicted of the crimes they've committed.
Okay. And Neroli? Since it was almost 2 months before the arrest, would that be enough time for any jury injuries to heal on him?
I would think so. It depends. I don't know if he's diabetic or anything, so I don't know how quick he heals. we'll find out because he has facial injuries. And so we'll know as he progresses through how quick he heals, because just from those injuries, we'll be able to see something.
Oh man, y'all are breaking my heart here.
What's going on?
Lisa Marie Presley is dead.
Oh my goodness. It's sad.
Wow, we were just talking about
Yeah.
that before this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad. I hope I didn't miss anybody's, but that kind of threw me for a loop. Okay. Let me scroll.
Terrible.
We did all of the ones that I had starred. So let's see here. Whoa. Okay, let's see here. Do you, this is from Mindy. Do you think they'll send him to be treated for mental illness before his trial like they did Lori Daybell?
I'm sure they're going to be doing certain things, but I think it won't be for any type of things that he might be able to present to the court as far as a defense as sanity. But if he does have certain types of illnesses, mental, and he needs help in that manner, the courts will make sure that he's evaluated, and so that he doesn't do anything to himself or to others, and we'll be able to be protected.
All right. You're done as far as I can tell, unless I missed somebody.
Well,
I hope I didn't.
I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And like I said, we appreciate all our members and our viewers. If you liked the show tonight, please share it, like it. And we just thank everyone for how you can support this channel. We appreciate it. But if you have any information, like I said, as we close every show, if you have information on this case to make sure that a fair trial is and justice is found about these homicides for Madison, Kaylee, Ethan, or Xana, make sure you make contact with law enforcement because at the end of the day, that's one thing we want. And so our thoughts and prayers for those families and with the Lisa Marie. But we just want to thank y'all for being here tonight. And I'll see you, Saturday.
What is today? Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
Saturday.
So we'll see y'all Saturday night. So y'all be safe and be careful out there. And thank y'all for being here tonight.
Love y'all.